Okay, so moving and assisting. Why would we need to do moving and assisting within our job role? What kind of things are you required to do? What are you doing every day?
Hoisting.
Yes,
service
hoisting
users.
service users. What other
Rolling.
things do you do? Rolling service users.
Slide
sheets. What about more office space? What do you get deliveries of each week?
gloves.
Gloves.
Stationery.
Yeah, so stacking gloves up, moving stationery, putting that away. So basically the general aim of this lesson then is to make sure that, well, we're refreshing your moving and handling knowledge. So those techniques that are available for you that make sure that you work in a safe and efficient manner. So by the end of training you will be aware of current legislations relating to moving and assisting. To be able to explain, I should be able to explain to you as students your responsibilities for yourself and also towards protecting our clients and their support. To look at policies and procedures that are in place to ensure that you as an employee are safe within your workplace and also your clients. So, legislations involved with moving and assisting then, you've got your Manual Handling Operations Regulations, your Health and Safety at Work Act, Human Rights Act, Management of Health and Safety Regulations, Lifting Operations and Lifting Equipment Regulations, quite often referred to as LOLA. You've also got your Provision and Use of Work Equipment Regulations and your Common Law of Negligence. So just to go into those a little bit further then, your Manual Handling Operations Regulations. As the employer, we must obviously make sure that you're avoiding any hazardous manual handling, so far as reasonably practical. Assessing any hazardous manual handling operations that cannot be avoided. To reduce the risk of injury as far as reasonably practical. Reviewing any assessments, so obviously when we have new clients they're assessed initially to make sure that it's obviously safe for you guys to go in there, but there's also reviews done and you guys do risk assessments every time you go in to see your client as well. And then providing general information on the weight of loads. So a load could be a box of gloves as you said, but it could also refer to our service users. So they're our responsibilities as your employer. What are your responsibilities as the employee?
Should be the same, or reporting back anything that's changed on risk assessments.
Yes, so any changes you need to make sure that you report back to the office. What other things?
To follow company procedures.
Yeah, following company policies and procedures. So any instructions that are in place, so these are going to be things that are written in your care plans for each of your service users, but also it's going to be things that the office are contacting you, telling you over the phone. It might be on your mobile phones, your road runner messages, those kind of things, and also in your communication books as well. Obviously you need to make sure that you're acting with reasonable amount of skill and care. To use professional judgment to decide if a move is actually safe. If something's changed within that service user's home, for example they've bought a new rug, is it still safe for you to be pushing their hoist across that, and little things like that. And as you said as well, to report any concerns to the office immediately, they can do a reassessment of the situation, because the last thing we do want to do is injure yourselves or our service users. We've also got your Health and Safety at Work Act, so as we've already touched on, you as the employee need to make sure that you are safe, but you also take into consideration your fellow carers, anyone else that you're working with, and also your service user. Comply with safety instructions given by your employer, so through training or obviously your policies and procedure books as well. Cooperate with any training provided, and to report any changes that have an effect upon your ability to carry out your job. So if you've hurt yourself, if you've fallen pregnant, Whether it's something that's temporary or long term, you need to notify the office, and that's why we do those regular health surveillances. Management of health and safety regulations. So again, the employers have responsibilities here, and they're to assess risks to the employees and others, making arrangements for planning, controlling, organising, reviewing all of those requirements by law, providing appropriate health surveillance. So as I said, you have to fill out a health declaration every 12 months just to make sure there's no changes. It doesn't mean that you're going to be put out of work, it means there's other duties available to you. Appoint competent people to help comply with the law, hopefully that's you guys, and assess the capabilities of the employee and provide adequate training and instruction. So that's why we do our moving and handling every year, because things change so quickly, and it's one of those risk areas that causes, well, a lot more people have injuries in that area. Provision and use of work equipment regulations. So we obviously need to make sure that you've got the right equipment available to you. So that's where we get the occupational therapists out to get things like Sarah Steadies and that in place. Obviously they need to suit the need of that service user and make your job easier when moving and handling is involved. Obviously there's an extra risk when you've got equipment in place, so things like hoists, they're heavy. If it was to fall, run over your foot, there's a higher risk of injury there. Ensure that markings and warning signs are clearly displayed, so you'll find on things like hoists you will have labels, also on the slings, and they should tell you how often, well, when it's due a service. Do you have any idea when they should be serviced?
6 months.
Every 6 months, yeah. Unless it's a brand new one, then it should be every 6 months. Unless it's a brand new one, then they should be done yearly.
Yeah, it's a year.
Ensure that only trained people use the equipment. So obviously if you've not used a particular bit of equipment before, then you should be notifying the office and they should be getting someone out to come and assist you with that. And then again, providing that adequate training and supervision. Lola, as I mentioned, so this is where you, it involves inspecting all lifting equipment, so your hoists, every 6 months and prior to use. There's a 13-point check, so every time you go to use a hoist, you should be checking top to bottom to make sure that the brakes are working, it's free moving, the battery's charged and so on. And then you have a professional come out to obviously do a service on it, a bit like an MOT on a car. Your management of health and safety regulations, so as the employees, you should be using that equipment. Quite a common area where people slip up is using things like bed sheets to move people up the bed because it's easier and already in place. Well, by doing that, you're putting yourself at risk and also your service user. That's why we get equipment in like slide sheets to reduce the amount of friction and to make that movement easier for you. Obviously, notify management of any serious incident, or actually any incident should be notified to the office because we need to reduce that further risk of any injury or potentially worse from happening. So Beatree does have company policies which comply with those legislations mentioned previously. Risk assessments should be carried out prior to care by yourselves, but also by our office staff regularly, especially when moving and handling tasks are involved. And just a reminder for you there, manual lifting of service users, so dragging, pulling, and obviously lifting, is banned in all but exceptional circumstances. What might be included as an exceptional circumstance? When might we allow you to pull someone perhaps off their bed? CPR, yeah. It's going to be an emergency situation. If you bruise that person by moving them, you have to have a pretty good reason as to why you've done it. And I would say CPR, saving someone's life, is going to be one of those things. So that's where your common law of negligence comes into place. That service user has to show that you've had a duty of care that was owed by the person who caused them harm. So you've done that for a particular reason. The duty was breached by a careless action or omission. The breach directly caused them harm, the harm complained of. So you have to do it for an exceptional circumstance. No other time is acceptable. So, remind me then, what is a hazard?
Anything that would stop us doing our job.
Yes, it could be.
Yeah, as company policy states, really.
Yes, it's going to be something that has the potential to cause injury. Like you said, it's something that's stopping you from harming yourselves. So this is really important to think about when we're doing our risk assessments. Are there any hazards there? Has anything changed that could possibly affect us? What is a risk then? It is. Yeah, it doesn't matter. So risk is the likelihood of that injury actually happening. So risk assessments are done to obviously avoid the need for manual handling. That's why we have things like aids. So it could be a walking frame, a standing hoist, or a standing aid. All the time that we aren't getting physically involved is obviously going to be more beneficial for your health and safety, but also for our service users. Reduce the risk to the lowest practical level. Obviously reviewing if any circumstances change, so again report to the office if anything's changed, whether that's for the service user or for yourselves. And when we're doing our risk assessments, we need to use something called TILE. So before you do anything, you need to think about the task. So are you moving that person from their bed to their chair, from their chair to a commode? The individual is yourself. So are you trained to do what you're doing? Are you competent? Are you confident? Are you physically fit enough to do what you need to do? The load could be that box of gloves again. It could be the service user. And then your environment. Is your environment set up ready to do whatever your task is? So always bear that in mind. Okay, so I'm going to show you a quick video before we go into that bit. So we're going to look at the ideal way of lifting, and they say that the best person or age group to watch on the ideal lifting technique is actually a child. So if you can imagine, as a child, not all of your muscles have developed yet, and children, their back muscles haven't developed, so you'll find they will lower themselves down into the position, the correct position for lifting things without damaging themselves. It's only as we get older, our muscles obviously develop and we get quite lazy. So we'll watch this quickly.
Lifting and carrying is part of life from childhood. In fact, as children, lifting and carrying comes naturally. As adults, we're often told how to lift and carry correctly. It's a message that's drilled into us. Yet we find that bad lifting and carrying technique is a major cause of workplace injuries, including the potential for serious damage to the back. For children, correct lifting technique is automatic. They don't consider that there's another way to do it. But as adults, we get lazy, we get complacent, we bend our spines, lift with our backs, and do ourselves a lot of damage. So, what is it that children do naturally that we should be doing?
Okay, so did you see the difference there between the child lifting and how the adult lifted? What was the main difference?
Child bent his knees.
Bent his knees, yeah. And the adult obviously kept his back straight
Bent over.
and used his back to lift that box. So in the ideal world then, with lifting, how would you lift a box? What things do you need to think about when you're going to lift something?
No,
The weight.
Knowing the weight, so your load. Yeah, what else?
Size.
Size, yeah. Are you able to lift it on your own? Is there a second person needed? What else?
Where are you lifting it to?
Yeah, where are you lifting it to? So that's your task, isn't it? What else? Is there anything else?
You.
Me? Yeah, me. Am I able to do that? Am I physically fit? And also, don't forget our environment. Am I set up, ready to go? Wherever I'm moving that box to, are there any hazards? Are there any tripping hazards and so on? So when lifting a box, we need to make sure that you've got that wide base of support. So think about your feet. You need to make sure that you're close to the load. We never lift something up straight armed. You keep it as close to your body as possible. What else do I need to think about? What other body parts?
Back.
Your back, yeah. So I'm not going to bend with a straight back. It's better to bring yourself down using your knees than it is to bend with your back. Anything else? What about once I've picked that box up, so I've bent with my knees, I've picked the box up, I've got it close to my body, my head. You need to be looking the direction that you're travelling in, so you're never twisting your head around, looking down at the floor, what you've got in that box. So look where you're going. They recommend if you are lifting something, you shouldn't be doing it for more than 2 minutes at a time, so you need to pull it down and have a rest. And remember, obviously, when you're putting things down, you bend your legs again, you don't bend your back. What about if you're lifting something with someone else? So you've got a bigger box and there's 2 of you that needs to lift it. What could be an issue there?
Height.
Height, yeah, so you could have someone who's very tall and then someone who's quite short. It's not going to distribute that load evenly. What else? Okay, no. If you're working in a pair, with anything you do, normally you assign a lead. So one of you needs to be given instructions, because otherwise if you lift and you haven't told the other person, then you might lift at different times, so you could end up injuring each other. So just like with anything we do, it's the ready, steady, lift, ready, steady, roll, ready, steady, stand. Whatever you're doing, you need to be communicating with each other, so you do it at the same time. So what I'd like you to do is practice lifting. So if one of you lifts a box on your own, and then I have a larger box here, and you need to lift together. So it might not just be the size of the box, the weight, it could be an awkward box to carry, or the item could be awkward. Okay, so if I can get you guys to hop up, carry, if I can get you to pick up the small box on your own, so you think about your body. Beautiful. Is there anything you would have changed there?
Sorry. It's the way she went.
Sometimes you have to do the little tune, it makes it easier.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's good. The weight is close to your body, you've bent your knees to go down to the level of the box. Obviously you'd have to go further if it was on the floor. Your head is up, you're looking in the direction that you're probably going to go. Lovely, thank you. Okay, you two get to carry this one together.
It's too heavy. I'm only little.
So just communicate. Lift the box up. Actually, the box is probably bigger than you guys, isn't it?
It's a bit light.
You know, but it's an awkward shape. So what have we got to do?
Communicate.
Yes. Lay the box down flat on the table.
Oh, okay. Stand it that way so you can get it.
Where are we going?
Stay in it. Right, so basically all you've got to do is just communicate, say ready, steady, lift, and then we both obviously bend at the same time. Oh, that was my back, sorry. Carefully. That was my ankles. Like, you can lead.
1, 2, 3.
Lovely. Okay, so you probably could have got that together bit better. We try to, instead of 1, 2, 3,
Ready,
you
steady,
do ready, steady, lift.
Right.
So whatever the command is at the end, that's when you do it.
Yeah.
Because people get a bit confused. Do I go on 3? Do I go after 3? And that's where that miscommunication happens. Okay, right, if you'd like to sit down then. Right. So I do have a questionnaire for you all to fill out.
Think you need to do that.
This is only not it.
There's also a handout here as well, which is really useful. So it's just the basics on manual handling, basically.
Mm-hmm. I don't know, I've forgotten it all.
Where you stuck up?
She's gone, I forgot what they are.
Is that time?
Yeah.
So what's T?
That's it.
Task.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
what's something in my eye now?
task is obviously what we said, what you actually doing. So you move
Individual,
from bed to
load.
table. Yeah.
Environment.
All the above.
I'm just going to put more.
Women are at greater risk of injury during menstruation. I guess some men would
Yeah, I probably agree with
that.
it.
If you leave the second sheet,
So on that question 8, 6 or a year, because it's the newer ones are every year, aren't they?
the older ones should be.
Are we
every
going
6
by an
months.
older one?
Yeah, if we
Right.
say an older one.
Even
I've
the,
seen
even
newer
the older ones, the labels on them all a year. So I know one particular round with all old ones, it's once a year.
Okay. We'll have a look.
I've already reported it all.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'll have a look
Yeah.
into that and let you know.
Right.
Can you tell her, please, miss? She's misbehaving. She's making me laugh. She's being a... This is what I have to put up with all day. She makes thongs out of aprons.
Okay, once you've done this part, if you want to pop it into the middle, just keep hold of the other bit.
That one?
No, I haven't driven.
Oh,
Is that false? Why? Why would they say that?
Is it an old wives' tale?
It's got to be false, isn't it?
I reckon it's stronger.
Question.
Right, Julie, please concentrate.
I am.
If you just keep on with that one for now.
I was going to say.
Right, if you pop your questionnaires into the middle. Okay, just to
Do we need our names on them?
yes, please.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, just to summarise then. So when moving people, when doing moving and assisting, we need to think, do we actually need to move that person? Consider and use normal movement for that person first. So if we can encourage them to stand up on their own, to position them in a way that they can stand on their own and give them encouragement or use aids, that's better than us getting physically involved or using things like hoists. Prepare the person and let them know what you plan to do. So that's with your fellow carers as well. Communicate, talk to that person constantly. That's going to help them. Otherwise, some people can become quite anxious if you start rolling them or moving them without telling them exactly what's going on. It can upset them. Make sure you've prepared your equipment, so whether that's the actual devices you're using, the hoist, the Sarah Steady, and also if you're giving someone a bath, it's going to be your soaps, towels, fresh clean clothing and things like that. Prepare your manoeuvre, decide exactly how you're going to do it, because quite often you don't have very much space to work within. Prepare that environment. Is it free from obstructions or hazards? So if they have got a rug, perhaps ask them, can we roll that up until we've finished? So it makes your life easier and obviously a lot safer as well for both of you. When moving a person from one room to another, we need to make sure that we're using a transportation device, so a wheel commode or wheelchair, not something like a Sarah Steady or a hoist. They are transfer only, so they're to be used within the one room. Okay, any questions? No, all quite happy? Okay, press the button.
Oh, it's gone.
Touch anything.
No.